You won't believe what happened when a desperate single mom discovered her extraordinary gift. That's right, it all began when she found a way to soothe infants suffering from a mysterious disease that had doctors throwing in the towel one by one. My name is Kelly, and I'm gonna tell you everything about how I became the only one to challenge the entire medical establishment. I struggled as a single mother, working jobs just to make ends meet. But when my baby fell ill with this impossible condition, everything changed. The doctors were baffled. They had no idea how to cure my child. They were desperate. I saw with my own eyes the agony these little ones suffered. And when all hope seemed lost, I discovered I could calm them just by holding them close. I'm talking about an unseen connection that felt like magic. In this video, you're going to learn about the day I realized my gift. You'll discover how I convinced skeptics to listen. What happened when I faced off against doctors who turned their backs on mothers like me? And finally, the shocking truth behind this supposed disease that left many helpless. But first, if you want to uncover all the jaw-dropping details of my journey, like this video, subscribe to my channel for more unbelievable stories, and share this with friends who need a dose of inspiration. Comment "Healing Mom" below so I know you're with me. Ready? Then hold on tight because this story is so crazy, you won't believe it. Let's get started. It all began on a chilly afternoon in 2017, in a small town where I, Kelly, was just a struggling single mom, making ends meet with a part-time job at a local diner. My life was filled with the usual challenges: juggling work, caring for my toddler, and worrying about bills. But then, my world turned upside down when my baby Lucy fell seriously ill with a strange disease that left her crying day and night. Doctors were baffled. They had no answers, and they were overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty. As I watched them struggle, I felt a spark of desperation ignite within me. I witnessed the agony not only in my child, but in others like her. It was a shared suffering. In those hospital halls, I met other parents and began to form a bond, a community of desperate souls searching for hope. One chilly night, as I cradled Lucy against my chest, something remarkable happened. I felt a powerful warmth radiate through my body and into her. To my utter disbelief, she stopped crying. It was as if my embrace had created an unseen connection, a soothing magic. I knew I had to explore this gift. I spent weeks trying to master this feeling, holding and calming other infants in the waiting room as I learned how to connect with them. Each time I was successful, I gained more confidence. Slowly, word started to spread among parents looking for solace for their sick babies. But it wasn't easy. Many doctors dismissed my efforts as mere coincidence, or worse, a distraction. They turned their backs on mothers like me, insisting that there was no cure. Then it happened, a turning point that changed everything. One of the doctors, desperate after failing to help a specific infant, reluctantly asked me to try my approach. I was nervous, but also filled with determination. As I cradled that baby, I felt the same warmth I had felt with Lucy. For the first time, the doctor actually saw the power of my gift. They couldn't deny it any longer, but their support came with skepticism. Was it real or just a fluke? As more parents turned to me, I realized the challenges ahead. I had emboldened some, but others continued to discourage me. What I didn't see coming was the enormous backlash. The medical establishment was not ready for someone like me, an ordinary single mom upending their status quo. Little did I know that the true battle for acceptance and understanding was just beginning. As word of my unique ability spread, everything began to change. Parents started coming to me, not just from my town, but from surrounding areas. I witnessed how my simple embrace could calm their sick infants. I still remember the look of hope in the mother's eyes when her baby would finally settle down. It was then that I realized the power I had. People were desperate for solutions they couldn't find in the medical world. You wouldn't believe how quickly it all escalated. I began to form a network of parents, and soon families started approaching me for advice and help. I saw how my little community began to grow. I was not just helping one child. I was impacting entire families. I witnessed countless moments of joy that filled my heart with purpose and validated my journey. But I also understood the risks I was taking. The more I helped, the more attention I attracted. I could sense the doctors' discontent. I saw how they rolled their eyes whenever I walked into the hospital, whispering doubts to one another about my unorthodox methods. But I kept pushing back, determined to show them that a single mom could make a difference. Soon, I found myself navigating uncharted waters. I saw the distrust in the medical establishment, but ignited something powerful among parents. I began hosting sessions where I would share my experiences and teach mothers how to connect with their babies deeper. Attendance skyrocketed. I witnessed groups of parents gathering with hope, shining bright in their eyes. All looking for a miraculous connection they believed I could provide. The competition, however, was fierce. I faced rejection in the medical field and skepticism at every turn. I realized I needed to formalize my approach if I wanted to be taken seriously. With sheer determination, I committed to documenting every interaction, every calming moment, and every healing I experienced. I compiled impressive numbers and testimonials, showing undeniable results. Within a year, I had helped over 300 infants, each case unique, and each success reinforcing my credibility. The support from the parents fueled my fire, growing my reputation. Reports of my successes began passing from word of mouth to social media. A phenomenon erupted. I saw how I went from just a single mom to a name synonymous with hope and healing. Despite that, I couldn't shake the thought that the doctors were not done with me yet. The pushback intensified. They scheduled meetings to discuss my activities, labeling me as a quack, trying to undermine their expertise. What they didn't realize was that I was becoming a force to be reckoned with. As the demand for my help grew, I also noticed the anxiety rising within the medical community. While they met behind closed doors, discussing how to dismiss this mom with a magic touch, I expanded my outreach, helping little ones in hospitals far and wide. But just as everything started coming together, whispers of something larger reached my ears. I couldn't ignore the feeling that a confrontation was brewing. One that could lead to exposure, backlash, or perhaps even a chance to turn this impossible disease on its head. And I found myself standing on the edge of a defining choice that could determine not just my journey, but the fate of countless families yearning for an answer. And the moment that changed everything arrived. It was a shocking day in December 2018. The hospital where I had fought relentlessly to calm infants became the epicenter of a fierce confrontation. I was there, Kelly, a single mom with a magic touch, standing at the edge of a monumental breakthrough. Every parent in that waiting room felt the tension. They had witnessed my connection with their little ones and were desperate for answers. But as soon as I stepped into the pediatric ward, the air shifted. Doctors were gathered in a huddle, whispering behind their pristine white coats. Dr. Thompson, the head pediatrician known for his rigid approach, was at the center, his demeanor cold and unyielding. I had been summoned for an urgent meeting after rumors began to spread. An impressive number of parents had reported my methods in forums and social media, and now the medical establishment felt threatened. I was about to face the dilemma of my life. As I approached, Dr. Thompson's eyes locked onto me. "Miss Kelly, we have serious concerns about your activities here," he began, his voice steady yet menacing. "We have patients suffering from this so-called impossible disease, and you think you can cure them with your embrace?" That was the day I realized they wanted me out. In that room, I saw firsthand the skepticism and fear radiating from them. I discovered that my growing reputation and success in calming dying infants had put me on their radar, not as a solution, but as a threat. I could feel the weight of their judgment. Despite their scorn, I couldn't turn away. I had witnessed miracle after miracle. On December 12, 2018, I successfully calmed an infant named Mia, who had been screaming nonstop. It was a moment that should have galvanized the doctors. Yet all they could see was the unraveling of their authority. The medical officials didn't just doubt me, they feared what I represented, a challenge to their clinical expertise. As I stood my ground, Dr. Thompson laid down the facts. "Your methods are unscientific, and we can no longer associate with you. We've had multiple complaints, and our governing body is considering a full report against you. They're saying you're misleading parents." I recalled the cheers of parents, the spark of hope in their eyes when they saw their children finally calm. I witnessed the raw emotion that resonated throughout that hospital. In that moment of confrontation, I revealed what I had discovered. "You're wrong, Dr. Thompson. The data shows I've helped over 300 babies find peace. I have letters from parents stating that their children were calmer and more responsive after my visits." But he remained unmoved. "You have no credentials or training. It's time for you to leave." I was hit by the culmination of their disbelief. But more than that, I felt the fire of determination burning inside me stronger than ever. I had to act. They would never silence me without a fight. As I turned to leave, something snapped inside me. Maybe you want to look more closely at what you've dismissed. I believe there's something profoundly natural at work here. One that you don't understand because you're too wrapped up in your science, I stated defiantly. Their rejection stung, but as I stood up straight, I recognized that I needed to take this fight public. I knew that the only way to save the families relying on me was to expose the truth of what was happening in that hospital. I hadn't just been seen as a miraculous light in a sea of darkness. I had to harness this wave of notoriety. Leaving that meeting, I felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. Should I share my journey with the world? The backlash from the medical field could be severe, but I knew I was no longer just an ordinary single mom. I had the power to stand up for all the parents who believed a connection could heal. With every step, I envisioned a storm brewing, a confrontation that could either demolish my efforts or amplify our voices to fight for something greater. I could feel challenges ahead, knowing a medical establishment wouldn't back down easily, but I was determined to face an inevitable clash that could redefine hope for families and the impossible disease plaguing our children. And just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed with alerts. The parents started a social media campaign to rally behind me. #HealingMom was trending. Suddenly, I was thrust into a public battle for acceptance and validation. that shook the medical community to its core. What would happen next? The stakes were higher than ever. After that shocking confrontation with Dr. Thompson, my life was turned upside down. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, I received relentless social media messages filled with attacks. The medical community escalated their campaign against me, branding me a charlatan. My phone buzzed nonstop with threats. Stay away from our hospital if you know what's good for you. It was as if I had stepped into a nightmare. Hospitals began refusing to grant me access. Whispers of discrediting my work spread like wildfire. There were no solutions for the impossible disease, but I was facing a different kind of battle entirely. The authorities were quick to react. The medical board launched an investigation into my activities, claiming I was misleading desperate parents. I was summoned to appear in front of a review committee that threatened to strip me of legitimacy I had painstakingly built. They hoped to silence me, but I had the testimonials and evidence of my successes backing me. I knew I couldn't fold. But then, the most crushing blow came days later. Hospitals began denying treatment to families who sought my help. Parents crying out for support were turned away because they had associated with the mom who claims to heal. Reports surfaced of multiple infants worsening because they missed vital treatments while waiting for my help. And numbers were devastating. At least 15 babies reported complication spikes. Families were devastated. The pressure intensified. My allies started receiving threats, urging them to reconsider their support. "Do you want to be associated with a fraud?" people asked, sowing distrust in my community. Some of the parents I had helped began to waver, fearful of a backlash from doctors who once dismissed them as credible. Despite the harassment, parents banded together, determined to stand against the establishment. They organized rallies and spread the hashtag #HealingMom, demanding to be heard. Following these events, the authorities attempted to counter the movement. They issued statements through mainstream media, claiming my methods were dangerous and calling for an end to my public gatherings. But just when I thought the wall of opposition was as sturdy as it could get, startling news broke. In an exclusive interview, one of the pediatricians who once dismissed my methods came forward, revealing that I had helped their child when they were at their lowest. They described my approach as a life-altering moment, igniting even more support from parents. Every spark of hope brought additional pressure against the medical establishment. They couldn't ignore it any longer. With public outcry and rising testimonials, my journey threatened to expose just how invalidated they had made countless families feel. As I faced an uncertain future, a realization struck me. This was bigger than just saving babies. It was a fight for the rights of families like mine. The struggle for acceptance was about to escalate into a nationwide dialogue on the role of conventional medicine versus natural healing methods. And as I stood on the precipice of this monumental change, I knew that at any moment, the medical establishment could retaliate in ways I couldn't even predict. My journey was far from over, and the fight of my life was just beginning. And so, after months of growing tension, the moment came when everything shifted dramatically. It was March 15th, 2019, and I stood outside the state capitol building, where I had organized a rally. The air was electric, filled with parents holding posters and chanting for recognition and change. They believed in me, believing I could heal their children in ways conventional medicine couldn't. I was determined to fight for our cause, against a medical establishment that saw me as a threat. Despite the support, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I knew that on this day, the medical board was planning to make a decisive move against me. Just as I was about to take the stage, my phone buzzed with the news. A majority of the board members had voted to pass a resolution formally banning me from the hospitals. They presented my methods as unscientific, intending to shut down my efforts for good. As I stood there in front of a crowd of families who had entrusted me with their hopes, I had a choice to make: back down or stand up for what I believed. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the makeshift stage. The sea of faces, parents with anxious expressions, children clutching their toys, bolstered my resolve. I am here today not just for myself, but for every child who deserves a chance, I began, firmness in my voice. They say I'm a quack, but every parent here can confirm just how powerful love and connection are. I paused, letting the energy simmer. Do you know that the medical establishment is trying to silence us? They're saying that embracing our children is illegal. The crowd erupted in support, but just then, chaos broke loose. Medical personnel, supporters of the board, descended upon the rally, attempting to disperse us. They raised their voices, claiming we were spreading false hope and misinformation that endangered lives. It was a whirlwind of shouts, threats, and a clash of beliefs. In that moment, I realized my efforts had led to a final confrontation. Standing against the tide of opposition, I felt a profound weight pressing down. This was the moment where my fight for recognition turned from hope to despair. The authorities began arresting several of my supporters, labeling them disseminators of misinformation. The pressure escalated, and my heart raced. It was over. This battle that ignited hope had fallen apart right in front of our eyes. At that moment, I stood powerless, while the truth about my methods started eroding, dumped under the pressure of the medical establishment. Then came my biggest revelation that I had not shared publicly, truly shocking. I had gathered undeniable evidence. I discovered a hidden database among parents who had also claimed non-traditional treatments worked for their children before I appeared. This sparked my fire, and I mentioned it out loud for the first time in front of everyone. And do you know what the establishment doesn't want you to know? There are thousands of parents like me, sharing methods they won't acknowledge. We're united, and we're not going away. The reaction was instantaneous. The rally grew louder, and I could see determination in their eyes. This wasn't just my struggle anymore. It was ours. We began to chant together, calling for accountability from the medical board for their failure to listen. It was a collective movement, sparking a fire within each of us that could not be extinguished. As I stepped down from the stage, I knew this was not the end of my story. Even in the fallout of rejection, I had unleashed a movement among desperate parents. So while the doctors attempted to dismiss me, that day was merely the beginning of a far bigger fight. Our voices would resonate on. And as the crowd swelled, I prepared for what lay ahead. A moment unlike any other would soon arise, one that would forever change the narrative around the impossible disease. The battle for acceptance had just begun. And so, after everything I endured, began to change. With my determination igniting a movement among desperate parents, I became a symbol of hope against the rigid medical establishment. The journey was tough, but in March 2023, I launched #HealingMom, which gained traction across social media. parents rallied behind our cause, demanding recognition for alternative healing methods. And that is how the fight for acceptance culminated in rallies and newfound alliances that challenged the conventional beliefs driving fear within the medical community. The momentum I created empowered countless families who sought change and connection, proving that a single mom can indeed create ripples even against the most daunting obstacles. Today, in 2025, I stand resilient, having spoken at numerous conferences advocating not only for the parents and children I once helped in hospitals, but for all families seeking answers regarding health and wellness. My voice has finally found its place, and the tide is turning as more medical professionals begin to acknowledge the importance of emotional connections in healing. This story highlights the profound impact of believing in oneself and revealing an unseen truth. The universe indeed responds to the power of love and connection, something that conventional medicine had long overlooked. The biggest lesson here: sometimes the answers we seek are simpler than they appear, and standing up for what we believe in can change lives forever. And if this story grabbed you, like this video because it helps the channel a lot. Subscribe and hit the bell because I upload stories just as intense as this every week. Share it with anyone who loves these themes. And comment below. Do you think I did the right thing by revealing my journey? Seriously, thanks for the support. Stay tuned for more on how connection can redefine health and challenge the status quo.